I still remember that morning like it was yesterday. Cold, quiet, and strangely heavy. The kind of morning when even the wind sounds tired. I was sitting outside my small repair shed at the edge of town, sipping coffee from a tin mug I'd had since my army days. The paint had chipped off years ago, but somehow I couldn't part with it. It reminded me of simpler times, back when orders were clear, and you always knew who you were fighting for. These days, I fought different battles, mostly against loneliness and the ache in my knees. I'd been out of the service for almost 15 years now. The medal still hung in a box somewhere, gathering dust. People used to say, "Thank you for your service," whenever they passed me in uniform. But gratitude fades faster than rust when the world moves on without you. I ran a small roadside repair shack. Mostly old trucks, sometimes a tractor or two from nearby farms. Nothing fancy, but that morning something caught my eye. A black Rolls-Royce Phantom creeping down the road like it didn't belong there. The contrast made me pause. That kind of car didn't visit our side of town. The road was cracked, the signs faded, and most of my neighbors still walked to work. Then, a sharp pop. The sound of a tire blowing out echoed across the road. I stood up, wiping grease off my hands with a rag that had seen better days. The Rolls had pulled over just near the curve, steam rising from under the hood. I could already tell. The man inside wasn't used to being stranded. I approached slowly, not wanting to startle him. The tinted window rolled down halfway, revealing a man in his 40s, clean-shaven, wearing a navy suit that probably cost more than my whole garage. He looked at me the way city folks look at mud, like it's an inconvenience that shouldn't exist. "Need a hand?" I asked. He glanced down at his watch, then back at the road. "Yes, apparently. The car's overheating, and I don't have time for this." His tone was clipped, impatient. "Pop the hood," I said calmly. He hesitated for a second, then pulled the lever. I lifted it up and felt the heat wash over my face. Steam hissed from the radiator. "Coolant leak," I muttered, checking the hoses. "You're lucky it didn't seize up the engine." "Give me a few minutes," the man sighed, checking his phone. "How long exactly?" I smiled faintly. "You can't rush good work, sir." He didn't reply. Just leaned against the car, scrolling through messages. I went to work silently. My hands remembered what to do. The rhythm, the patience, the small grace of fixing something broken. Funny how that skill had followed me from the battlefield to the back roads. 15 minutes later, I had the leak sealed and the coolant topped up. "All done," I said, wiping sweat from my forehead. He looked at me like I just handed him an envelope, not fixed his car. "How much?" I shook my head. "It's fine, just glad to help." That caught him off guard. "You're not taking payment?" "No, sir. You looked like you were in a hurry. Besides," I gave a faint smile, "service never stops, right?" He frowned, not out of anger but confusion, like no one had ever said that to him before. Then, without a word, he got into the car, started it, and drove away. No thank you. No handshake. Just a blur of black paint disappearing into the horizon. I watched the dust settle on the road and went back to my coffee, which had gone cold. Didn't think much of it after that. People come and go. Gratitude isn't a guarantee, but 2 days later, a white SUV stopped outside my shack. A man in a black suit stepped out and handed me an envelope. "Mr. Lewis?" he asked. "Yes." "This is from Mr. Caldwell." The name didn't ring a bell until I opened the envelope. Inside was a check for $25,000 and a handwritten note. "For the man who still believes service never stops." "You fixed more than a car that day." I just stood there staring at it, the paper trembling in my hands. But that wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of something I never expected, something that would bring me to my knees a week later. For a long while, I just stared at that envelope. The handwriting was neat, deliberate, the kind of writing from someone who'd never known calluses or scars. I didn't know what to do. $25,000 could have changed a lot for me. Fixed my roof, replaced the old truck that coughed more than it ran. But something about it didn't sit right. I wasn't a charity case, and I hadn't helped the man for a reward. Still, curiosity got the better of me. That night, after closing the shack, I went home and looked up Mr. Caldwell on my old laptop. It took a few tries, but eventually I found him. Alexander Caldwell, CEO of Caldwell Automotive Group, billionaire, philanthropist, all that shiny stuff people say about men who have more money than they can spend. His photo made me pause. Sharp eyes, same suit, same expression, like he'd been carved from something that never softened. I almost threw the check away. But I didn't. Instead, I folded it, put it back in the envelope, and told myself I'd think about it tomorrow. But tomorrow came with a storm. It was past noon when another car pulled up. This time it wasn't a Rolls. It was a modest gray sedan. The door opened, and out stepped Mr. Caldwell himself. No bodyguards, no chauffeur. Just him, looking almost human this time, his sleeves rolled up. "Mr. Lewis," he said quietly. "May I come in?" I nodded, still surprised. "Sure, but I don't usually entertain billionaires in my garage." He smiled faintly. "Then let's just say I'm here as a man." He looked around, at the tools, the old flag hanging by the door, the framed photo of my unit on the wall. His eyes paused there longer than I expected. "You served," he said softly. 22 years, I replied. "Iraq and Afghanistan. Lost good men, lost my boy too." Something flickered in his expression, something raw. "Your son served?" I nodded. "Yeah, Staff Sergeant Daniel Lewis. He was 27 when—" My voice faltered. IED explosion. Saved 3 of his squad mates. Didn't make it home. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was heavy. Real. Then Caldwell reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded photograph. "Is this your son?" It took me a moment to recognize it, because it wasn't one I'd ever seen before. Daniel stood there, dusty and smiling, arms slung around another soldier, a younger version of Caldwell. My knees almost gave out. "Where did you get this?" He took a slow breath. "Your son saved my life, Mr. Lewis." The words hit me harder than any bullet could have. He continued, voice trembling now. "We were ambushed near Fallujah. Our Humvee was hit, and I was pinned under debris. Your son came back for me when everyone else had fallen back. He dragged me out, took the shrapnel meant for me. His voice cracked. "I've lived with that debt ever since." I couldn't speak. I just stared at the photo, tracing my boy's face with my thumb. Caldwell looked at me then, not like a billionaire, not like a man used to getting his way, but like someone who'd finally remembered what it meant to be human. "When I saw you fixing my car, I didn't recognize you right away," he said, "but when you said service never stops, it hit me. It was something your son used to say too." Tears blurred my vision. For years, I'd wondered if Daniel's sacrifice had even mattered, if anyone remembered, and here stood living proof that it did. Caldwell placed a small box on the workbench. "This isn't payment," he said. "It's gratitude." Inside was a medal, Daniel's silver star, beautifully restored and framed beside a brass plate that read, "In honor of Staff Sergeant Daniel Lewis, a man who never stopped serving." Behind it, there was also a set of keys. Caldwell gestured toward the road, where a brand-new repair van sat gleaming in the sunlight. The side was painted with my shop's name, Lewis Auto Service, Esternter 2008. My hands trembled as I held the keys. "I don't know what to say." "Then don't," he said softly. "Just know that some debts aren't meant to be repaid, only honored." He stayed a while longer. We talked about Daniel, his laughter, his stubbornness, the way he'd once built a makeshift radio out of scrap metal. For the first time in years, I felt like someone else remembered my boy not as a name on a memorial wall, but as a man who'd lived. When Caldwell finally left, the sky was turning orange. I stood outside, the photograph clutched to my chest, watching the sun sink behind the hills, and for the first time since the war, I cried, not out of grief this time, but something else. Something like peace. I still run that small shop. Every car I fix, I think of Daniel. Every stranger I help, I remember what he stood for. And every time I see that photo, my son with the man whose life he saved, I whisper the same words that once guided us both. Service never stops. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to Tale Story House, where every story reminds us that even the smallest kindness can echo for a lifetime.